Welcome to another broadcast of YOUnique, Life Starring You on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are archived. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now, here's your host. It's Susan Stackpole.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on YOUnique, Life Starring You. We are what we are because of you, and we thank you so much for your support. We have a special project we do here at YOUnique called Pray It Forward, and studies show loving thoughts, meditation, and prayers actually improve the energy of a situation. And so we just ask if there's anything disconcerting in your inner circle or in the world around you, you just take a minute, take a breath, send some loving thoughts, prayers, meditation, and we feel that that positively changes the world, and we thank you for your participation in that. We have an amazing guest here with us today. Super excited to welcome her on the program. Her name is Courtney Amundson. I'll share with you a little bit about Courtney and then we'll bring her in. Courtney began her path as a seeker at a young age, progressing to the point that the teachings began to flow through her with complete love and joy. And it began at the age of 16. The wisdom she received in the beginning for her own evolution and understanding led her to be guided to share with as many people as possible through a wonderful book, and she'll share more with us about that today. She has since then been working single-mindedly on sharing these teachings with the public, and through the work of the book, expanding her sharing these insights through publishing articles, speaking, and the like. Courtney is wonderfully educated in energy work. She has a spring level Qigong levels 1 through 4 and craniosacral level therapy at the Upledger Institute. She's also a classically trained violinist and is engaging her passion for music in a new, more free-flowing expression. Teachings from God, the wonderful book Courtney is going to share more with us about today, is the inspiration and tools to help people create life that is exciting, and she wants to inspire you in creating your own amazing life. Please visit her website at www.teachingsfromgod.com. That's teachingsfromgod.com. Please join me in welcoming the lovely Courtney Amundson. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so excited to talk with you.
We're delighted to have you here, and you just have so much wisdom, and you just have such a beautiful spirit and radiant energy, and so thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to share, and I'm excited to also share that I'm always learning myself, so even what I share, I am constantly learning as well and putting into practice for myself.
Right, it's a process.
Yes.
I think for all of us, it's a process. So, Courtney, obviously you've chosen a brave path, or more so, it's chosen you. And I commend your courageousness in stepping up and sharing the wisdom that has come to you and comes through you. Could you share with us when you first became aware of your own enlightenment and any mentors and teachers you've met along the way that have helped facilitate your growth?
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's been a amazing journey for me, and ever since I was young, I think I had this awareness of something that needed to come out of me, and it's always been transforming into different things along my life. I wanted to play violin ever since I was about 4 years old. I remember watching Teletubbies, actually, and some Vivaldi piece was playing, and I can't remember what it was at this moment, but I remember watching it and thinking, whatever instrument that is, I want to play that.
Wow.
And that was my inspiration for a long time, and music still is my inspiration. But then it transformed into art, and it transformed into wanting to be a healer. And I met this amazing Qigong master when I was 9 years old. His name is Chun-Yi Lin, and he founded this organization called Spring Forest Qigong, and it's right here in Minnesota, and I was introduced to him when I was 9, and he has been an inspiration to me all of my life. And it really helped me to learn how to heal my physical body, and as a result, when you open up those physical channels and blockages in your body, it makes you a lot more open to, for example, how I became introduced to channeling and how I am now open to receiving these messages from Spirit. So at the age of 16 is when this fully awakened within me, and I was taking a meditation break during my school day. I was doing online school at the time, and I was sitting there on the couch, and I felt this amazing presence come through the top of my head. It was like golden liquid light. That's the best way I can explain it. And it trickled throughout my body, and I remember feeling like, or thinking in my head, this is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my meditations before, and I had been meditating since I was about 9. So, wow, completely different experience. And I just observed and was in the moment feeling this amazing energy, felt like an angel in my body. And when this light came down through my fingertips, I felt this pulsation in my hands. And so I intuitively went over to the computer. I was remembering Esther Hicks' story when she started to talk with Abraham. And I remembered that story in my head as this was happening to me. And so I went over to the computer and I thought, well, this is what Esther did, so I'm going to try this. And I put my hands down on the keyboard, and they started to press the different letters. And it was an amazing feeling, and I cannot describe what it felt like, besides that it was right, and I was just a vessel. And these words that started coming through were amazing and profound, and I realized I couldn't be making this up. This was something that was coming through me. It was a physical experience and an out-of-body experience and a divine presence that I knew was part of me kind of experience. So it was very life-altering. I remember the date. It was March 12, 2012. And from that day on, I devoted a couple hours a day to this, and I would sit down at the computer and do the same thing and go into these amazing states of meditation, just feeling blissed out and feeling at home and feeling like, wow, like this is really, the purpose of being human is to access these states because they're part of us and we all contain this wisdom within us. So that was an amazing experience, to say the least, and I don't think I really knew what it meant in the beginning. I didn't think I really knew the profundity of it. I knew the impact it had on myself, but I didn't know at that time the impact that it would have on so many other people.
Wow, that's so beautiful and amazing, and just the purity of that is inspiring. And maybe before we go any further, Courtney, you could share with other people who are seeking that sort of connection. And I feel like, especially speaking to people who have for years been maybe meditating or going to church or something where they've been seeking this connection and they feel very frustrated where they haven't been able to attain it, and then hearing someone like you that at where you are in your life has accessed it so fully, maybe you could share some insight about how people could more easily start accessing that connection in their own lives.
Yeah, definitely. I think a big thing for me in my life that has aided this type of communication that I have now is the simple fact that I was never forced into any one way of thinking, and I didn't have those conditionings or belief systems that would that would get in the way of this. A lot of different religions and a lot of different ways of thinking, and just society norms. They tell you what's normal and what we can and can't do, and what the purpose of being human really is about, and the definition of God. A lot of people believe that we're separate from God. And so that's a huge, huge boulder in, maybe seeing a work like mine where it talks about us being part of God and in unity consciousness with God. And for some that might be a scary thing because it goes against what they've been taught. And because I didn't have that in my life, when this came to me, I knew it as my true self.
Wow.
And I knew it as something that was natural and something that is part of all of us. And so I think if we're going to talk about how to get to that pure place or how to help others to get to that pure place, what I've been taught and what the book's been teaching me is that we have to let go of all of those conditionings that hold us back from that ultimate truth. And I've had to accept also that I'm never going to know the ultimate truth, that, I'm always learning and I'm always accepting that I have more to learn, even though I feel that I'm far along and I feel that I've learned a lot enough to enjoy my life a lot more and know the meaning of my life a lot more. But I've learned very clearly, and I've been put in my place by Spirit too, where it's humbling to know that we can access all of that wisdom ourselves, and you don't have to go to someone else to get it. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that so many people have, is they reach outside of themselves to try to attain information, and it becomes, you're almost always on crutches then, because when that person is taken away from you or that guru is taken away from you, then you feel completely lost and you feel completely alone, and you don't understand the purpose of your life. You don't understand how you can carry on without those answers or that crutch with you. And so it's kind of a debilitating relationship to have. And I believe that everyone deserves to choose their own path, and everyone deserves to choose their own religion or lack of religion. And I think it's all perfect because everyone has their own path and their own destiny. But for those that are consciously on a path of trying to gain their own empowerment and trying to find their own true voice, then you have to let go of those conditionings, and you have to let the divine come in and assist you and listen. I've learned that the definition to me of prayer is speaking to God, and the definition of meditation is listening to God. And I just thought that was a profound revelation to have, is that we're often talking to God, but we're even more often not listening when we're talking, because there's already this fundamental belief that we're separate from the Creator, or we don't deserve to have that communication, or we're too small to have that communication. And from my perspective and what I've experienced and learned is that we're part of this creative source, and we're co-creating with this source. And so it can help us so much if we can see our greatness right off the bat, and that helps to nurture that relationship with our divine nature, helps us to realize that we're creating our own life, and life isn't happening to us. Because when we believe that, there's a very victimizing standpoint. There's a very childlike kind of emotion, if you understand what I mean by that. Or we're kind of dependent on something all the time. And what we're being asked to do is to take control of our own life. And if we want something, don't just think that it's going to happen to you. Take the action steps towards what you want and have communication with your higher self. And if you don't know what that means, a good first step is to just be able to tune into your physical body, your physical structure. And for example, if you want some guidance on what diet is best for your body, what foods are best for your body, instead of going to someone else and asking them, a dietitian, asking them what's best for my age and gender, I would say maybe ask your body what it wants and listen to the body. Does it want it or does it reject it when you offer that food? So it's similar in any situation, really. If you want guidance on anything, you can listen to your physical body. You can listen to the reactions it has when you introduce a idea to it or a food to it or whatever it is. And those reactions are similar to your intuition. You're learning to listen. You're learning to pick up on the subtlety of this communication more. So I would say that's really the biggest thing in nurturing this relationship and building a stronger bond with your higher self or your God or your master, whatever word you use. It doesn't matter because the universe doesn't care what word you use. It cares whether you have a relationship and whether you can depend on each other for support and guidance, because that's really what it's all about. The universe wants us to feel empowered and wants us to know that we're loved and wants us to follow our highest expression in our bliss.
Beautiful. Wow, you just shared so much, Courtney. One of the questions that comes to mind is, and you talk about this in your book also, about our creating our own experience. And I feel like the advantage to understanding this at the point that you're at now is being able to more consciously create your life moving forward. And there's a lot of people I know, like one of the things, and I don't know why this came to mind, is people I know who are just very sweet and at the same time maybe are struggling with some sort of addiction or something and have not made healthy choices as a result of that. They've been very self-sabotaging. And when I've spoken with them, that a lot of times that comes from unhealed childhood trauma, where I've had people share with me some really, like their stories are like something out of a movie, and where they were abused or something like that. And so when you have conversations with them, it's to say, like, oh, well, you've created your life. What advice would you give to them? And then also, what advice would you give adults or anyone who maybe has made self-sabotaging choices that ultimately undermines their self-esteem in terms of making empowered choices moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really big one. And I think whether we're talking about addictions or we're talking about really any kind of habits that we as humans often take on throughout our life, anything that is causing some sort of addiction, for example, even any repeating emotion, certain situations that trigger an emotion within us, we all have these things. And I think what you said about it going back to childhood trauma, I think that is very accurate in many situations. I know for myself and just observing myself, if a certain situation comes up, I might have a trigger that I've always had since childhood, something that I always revert to automatically. And sometimes it's conscious and sometimes it's not conscious. But I think, and I've experienced this with other people too, it's hard to bring up to someone who's had a lot of hurt in their life and a lot of pain in their life. It's hard to tell them, hey, well, you created this. This is essentially your fault. And it's not very nice to do that either, because that's not very compassionate to them. And I realize that a lot of people have had struggles, and a lot of people don't know how to get out of them, even if they want to. And so
that's a good point, Courtney.
Yeah, it's a difficult spiral, because there's a fine line between wanting to give someone guidance and wanting to do the work for them, and that never works, because they need to walk that path on their own to some level. And I think a underlying or foundational piece to this is that person is playing small. That person is usually always playing victim. And in the way that I mean that is there's some belief that life is happening to them and that they don't have control over whatever this is that's causing them pain and suffering. Even just what comes to mind, like if a relationship doesn't work, a lot of times people will go back to that child self, something that triggered them from their child self that felt pain or felt too small to stick up for themselves. Just as an example, we all have those things. I think the biggest thing in assisting someone with an issue like that is, first of all, you have to make sure they want to make that step for themselves. And if they really do, then there's an opening for that work to begin, but you can never do it for another person. There's got to be some desire, some innate drive that's helping them to push themselves in that right direction. And the first thing, I think, is to have compassion for themselves, for where they are, and don't make up excuses. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to be honest with other people. You don't have to talk about it with other people, but in your own space, in your own time, go in and talk to yourself and be real with yourself and figure out your motivations. Because if you truly want to move through these things, you're going to go within and you're going to find those answers, and you're going to then have some motivation to make external life changes to help you in that right direction. But emotionally, I think a big thing is that people think that they can't work through it on their own. There's codependency, there's victimhood, there's all of these things, and I feel that's masking their true self. And so, I think everyone is different in the sense of how they're going to work through it best. But for me, when things come up that I need to look at, not in the sense of addictions, but I think it goes together. And any time that I need to look at something, I want to go within myself, and I want to look at the answers, and I want to ask myself, what don't you want to see? What do you have to work through that you don't want to see? And then I will, kind of stab at that and look at that and observe that. And it's never pretty. I mean, you can't expect it to be pretty. You can't expect it to be easy. But the moment you have the motivation to go in there and do the work and heal something, then no matter how painful it is, no matter how ugly it is, you know that you're going to work through it, and you know that you can do it. So I think step one is to just be willing to heal this part of yourself, no matter how much pain and how much struggle and how much illusions you have to work through to get there. The biggest thing I've learned is you can't do the work for another person. You can help people, you can support people, but you always have to do the work yourself.
It reminds me of where they talked about with a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, helping the butterfly, actually they won't survive. So there's a strengthening process that comes with their wings and having to make their way out of the cocoon. And I feel like that what you're sharing is so important, because I feel, especially from the outside of what I mentioned about if maybe somebody's really struggling, you're right that you can present solutions. However, they have to really want to do that for themselves. And I feel like what you said, Courtney, about asking yourself what it is that you don't really want to see. One of the things about you that's really inspiring is going back to what you said about releasing the judgment and the conditioning and really being more self-compassionate. I feel like more than anything, it's programmed where from a young age people start to look outside themselves for love and validation and worth and all of that. And most people I encounter, I feel, more than external judgment, they're very self-judgmental. They're very unkind with themselves. What insight do you have, Courtney, about helping people to get to a more self-loving space so they can take that step to say, okay, what is it about myself right now I don't want to see? Because that's such a brave question. And for somebody who's already self-judgmental and really being unkind with themselves, it's just going to be fuel for being even more intense with themselves.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's a deep one too, because I think that there has to be some kind of knowing within you that, and we all have this. We all have this knowing that we're infinite beings, and that when we came to Earth, whatever path we followed by our own free will is perfect. And as human beings with a limited perception, a 3D perception, it can be difficult to see that. And I get that. And I get that, we make a mistake or we have an experience that's really hard and really difficult. And, I'm not exempt from that. I have that all the time. And, you have to remind yourself there's nothing wrong with this experience, even though it doesn't feel good. And you have to empower yourself. Again, it all comes back to you again. Other people cannot lift you up and get you all the way there. You have to push yourself in that direction. But, even challenges that I've had where, it feels really icky, and someone else will remind me and give me boosts, and though it sounds nice, it doesn't feel like reality because it's not coming from myself, and the motivation is not coming from myself. So when I really get to a place where I'm ready to accept whatever is going on and I'm ready to work through whatever's going on, the only option really is to listen to myself. The only option is, because you've gotten to a place where you've surrendered. And I think that's the biggest thing. You've surrendered all of your motivations and all of your, I get what's going on, don't tell me what to do kind of stuff, the staff that we have a lot of times.
Right, to plant our feet in the sand.
Exactly, yeah. A lot of times we're just not ready to look, and we're not ready to see. And then it can become difficult for other people to understand, how can you just say, I love myself, I have compassion for myself? I don't think for anybody it's that easy. I don't think on the first try you can get there. I think everybody needs an experience, and many experiences and many trials that help them to get to that place. And even, as I'm telling my story, things come to mind where I'm like, yeah, I'm still working through that, and I'm still working through that, and I'm still going to have a million things to work through. And So even as you're quote-unquote enlightened, that doesn't mean that you're exempt from any struggle and any pain. It means that you're more willing to be conscious of what's really going on and to work through it in an easier way instead of resisting it and telling yourself there's something wrong and blaming other people and all of these things that we do to distract ourselves from what's really going on. And it's always some kind of pain that exists within us or some false illusion or memory that has to do with our own stuff. And that's really what I've learned is no matter what the situation is, you can't blame people for your whole life and get away with it. And you can't play victim. You have to get to a place of surrender at some point in your life where there's just too many reasons to not look within yourself. There's too many reasons, where you can't make other excuses anymore. And so, I think that's where self-love comes from, and compassion for the self is that ultimate realization that it all comes back to you. And it might take some work to get at it, but you have to keep reminding yourself that it's a long journey and it's a never-ending journey because we're infinite beings and we're never going to get it right on the first try. We're infinite. We've had so many lifetimes of experience. And one part in my book, I just thought it was humorous because a lot of times, Spirit will tell me, yeah, humans are so silly. They act like little puppies because when they run into walls, they beat themselves up. And the analogy was actually that puppies do the same thing. But when they run into the wall, they get right back up like nothing ever happened. And there's no self-shame. There's no, I'm so stupid, why did I do that? It's just natural. They have that instinct to get right back up, and we don't. Many times we don't. And from the larger perspective, it's like there's so many trials, and there's so many lifetimes to learn this, and we feel like we failed every time we fall down, and it's completely the opposite. So just that kind of perspective is what I meant to say.
I like perspective too. That'll be the word of the day.
Yeah. I think that really just helps to realize that it's really okay and it's really fine, and you don't have to beat yourself up for where you're at right now, even though you're learning. And also, you have the ability to get yourself up and to get into a better feeling place. But it's really all about what you want. And you have all the time in the world to get there.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that. That's so helpful because I more than anything, I think that's where people struggle the most is on the journey is just that constant tape that plays in all of our heads and especially I've encountered people who maybe they had especially critical parents growing up, and so that just got implanted in their subconscious. So even if they're really excelling at whatever it is they're doing in the background, they have that constant tape playing of saying they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not worthy enough. And so I appreciate what you were sharing, Courtney, about us remembering that it's going to take some time and it's going to take some learning and it's going to take persistence, and we have to keep at it. And one of the other things that came to mind while you were speaking is we had another gentleman on the program that basically twice was given 48 hours to live. And when he was in the hospital, he was given a divine revelation. And the first time, it was a divine revelation of the healing power of self-love. And so he came out, and against all odds, he went back in a year, and he was diagnosed with really significant, I think it was like 5 or 6 really significant things that one alone would have taken him off the planet. And when he went back to the doctors, they said, oh, this is miraculous. And he said that he was good, I think, for about 2 years, went back into the hospital. It was the same situation except magnified, and I think the second time they gave him 24 hours. And the second revelation he was given was that now that he had essentially mastered self-love, he also had to work on allowing himself to receive love and be loved by others. And I had asked him, I said, did you go to see any specialists or any other healers or anything like that? He said, no. He said, I had always been a student of enlightenment and spirituality and and he said, so I took everything that was in my toolbox to support myself toward being more self-loving. And so as you were talking about it, and you talk about it in your book as well, that's a really consistent theme throughout the book, is how significant it is to get into a space of being self-loving. And so I appreciate you going into so much detail and sharing with us about being patient with ourselves, because like you said, like the puppy, I don't know why as human beings we're so self-judgmental if we don't get it right on the first time. Well, why would we get it right on the first time, especially if we're doing it for the first time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a hard lesson to learn, and what I love about the book is that it helps you in a humorous, in a lighthearted way to understand these complex subjects and topics. And, you know, I think that has given me just a lot of confidence, too, in my own life. It's given me a lot of confidence to be a student of life and also know that I'm doing okay, and every step of the way I'm doing my best. And I'm always asking for guidance, and I'm always asking to hear what I need to hear at the right time, and remaining open to that guidance. And that's been a huge thing for me, is anytime I come against a challenge or something that makes me nervous or anxious, I'm always checking in, I'm always asking, you know, what do I need to hear? What technique can I use to help me through this? Or, you know, I think a huge thing for humans, as we think that in order to talk to God, in order to pray to God, that we need to have a significant issue to bring up, you know. We have to be on our deathbed to finally make some connection. A lot of people have that belief or that idea. Right. And I've found the communication and the relationship that I have with my higher self, with my divine knowledge, I've found it to be such an everyday type of relationship. I can talk about mundane things, and there's just as much excitement about it and just as much compassion and teaching about it as there is anything else. You know, if I was dying and if I was, you know, pleading or whatever, it's the same type of connection, and it's the same type of amazing love and amazing compassion. And that's what's amazing about it, is, you know, any time of the day I can tune in and I can talk about whatever I want to talk about and ask about whatever I want to ask about. And there's so much excitement that I'm there and that I'm tuning in, and then I'm making a conscious effort to make this relationship, you know, just keep it going throughout my life and stay in my highest bliss and follow my intuition and do only what makes me happy and don't do anything out of obligation. And don't judge yourself, and don't have fear. You know, it's such a journey, and it takes so much effort as humans. It feels like so much effort, all of these things, to learn these things. But, just the process in which I received this book and the journey that I went through translating this book, in this book, Teachings from God, that I'm now sharing with you. It's given me confidence, as I said, to let myself just dive into my own experience, and to be honest with myself all along the way that I'm still human, and I still have times where I feel alone, and I still have times where I feel like, geez, my emotions are getting the best of me, and I wish I could just perceive from the higher self all of the time, but that's not the point of being human. And I think that has been a big relief to realize in some way, is that we shouldn't be reaching for enlightenment. We shouldn't be reaching to experience like God, because we are, in many ways, part of God, wanting to experience itself in a different way. And humanity is vital to all of creation. And we think of ourselves as less, and we think of ourselves as small and pointless in some ways, and that our emotions get the best of us and our emotions hold us back. And in many ways, it's the fundamental piece of being human, and the point of being human is to have those polar experiences. So I think for what we've talked about today, I think that's a piece that I wanted to add. For any challenges, for anything that might be holding us up, just remember that having emotions and having these experiences are very important, and we can learn from them, and we can draw upon them in a positive way.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Courtney, one of the so a couple of things. One of the things you were saying and what you just shared is coming at things from, before I say that, thank you so much for sharing your own experience, because I feel like sometimes we tend to perceive people who have enlightened awareness like yourself at living life in a constantly enlightened state. So I really appreciate your candor and honestly expressing your human experience and how integral that is to why we're here. The thing that came to mind when you were sharing that is a passage from Eat, Pray, Love, where Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this moment of awakening, where I think she's on the roof and she's doing cartwheels or handstands or something. And she said, I realized that the reason I'm here is because God wants to experience that through me. He wants to experience like the feel of the pavement underneath my hands. And so what you were saying about just remembering that there's a point for us being here and being open to that greater experience, that humanity, rather than resenting it, that to embrace the experience, because that's part of why we're here. And one of the things that you shared while you were expressing that is about being in a place of bliss and not doing things from obligation. And I could almost hear people saying, well, how is that possible? Because we need to work to make money, to pay bills, to live. Maybe you could share with us a little bit more, clarify a little bit more about how to be in that place of doing things from bliss, and how to be accountable and be responsible for our commitments without necessarily feeling like it's coming from a place of obligation.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's a huge thing that a lot of people come to me with, so-called problem that they come to me with is, and I think a lot of that is in response to my own dreams and my own passions, and I've always been one to say, don't do it unless you really want to do it, and don't do it because your parents tell you to, don't do it because your teachers tell you to, and that's your best bet. If you don't want to do it and you're not feeling called to do it, then your whole energy is not going to be in it, and ultimately that's not going to serve you going forward. And when we're not following our bliss, and we're not following our passion, and we're not following our inner drive and our guidance system, what happens is there's resistance. Whether we want to admit it or not, there's resistance. And over time, that energy builds up, and we can develop unhealthy things in our body. We can develop illnesses. We can develop, unstable emotions and grief and anxiety and depression and all of these things that are not serving us and not helping us ultimately to get to where we want to be. So a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to really follow my bliss. I have to make money. But to me, that's an excuse, and that's really putting your blinders on, so to speak, because what you're ultimately wanting is to feel fulfilled. And anything that is telling you that's not the way to go is coming out of fear and coming out of this idea that if you follow it, you're not going to be supported. If you follow it, what if? And you don't know what's going to happen if you do follow your bliss and you follow your intuition. You don't know. And that's the whole process of letting go and surrendering and trusting in the universe. If you ask for something and it's presented to you, and then you say, I can't actually do that, I'm too scared to do it. If you turn down an offer like that from the universe, it's not going to be taken personally. You'll get another chance, but it's all for you, and you have to take notice of that. When those signposts come up, you have to take notice of it and act on it, because that divine guidance is always in our favor and always supporting us to where we want to be. And on the topic of money, I think there's tons of fear around it collectively, and I brought this up yesterday with someone I was talking to, and I said, I think the whole concept of money is a conditioning and something in our collective consciousness that is hard to break through, because there is so much identity and self-worth associated with money. And when we have money, we feel better, and we feel like we have more of a place in the world, and we have power. And all of these things are a cover-up for really understanding our true identity. And I think, and my experience has been, that as I've let go and trusted in the universe to provide for me, I've always been provided with the answers. And you can never come up with the perfect synchronicity and the perfect place or person that you need to meet, or the perfect situation that's going to get you to that end result, to your dream. You're not going to be able to create that in your mind on your own. You have to kind of lay down the framework and say what you want and have the intention of what you want, and then you follow the signposts, and you're going to feel uncomfortable at first because it's out of your comfort zone to not plan it and to not try to create it on your own. And that's the biggest thing, I think, with us, with humans, is that we want to have a set plan for everything. And when something involves the unknown, when something involves letting the universe assist you and help deliver it to you, it's too risky for a lot of us. And so that's where we use money as a cover-up, and to further blind us. And what I've found in my own life is I've asked for something, I've followed the signposts, and I've been provided with the answers and the connections that have helped me to get to where I want to be. And that's another amazing piece of how my book came to be. I've had so many connections that were divinely inspired and sent to me. I call them earth angels because they are. And I didn't plan it. I asked for what I wanted, and I knew that as I'm in this place of following my highest expression, the universe is working with me automatically because my resistance is down, and I'm ready to accept, and I'm ready to hear. So I'm in this place where no fear is existent, which means the pathways are open, and I'm listening, and I'm following the signposts, and therefore the money is provided to me, the connections are provided to me, and it's just easy, and it's flowing, and when you understand that, and when you have that direct experience yourself, then you know that that is what life is supposed to be like. And the fear of money is taken away, and the fear of whatever it is for you becomes a non-issue at that point. But again, it's always about experiencing and just having some patience with yourself as you learn it. But I have experienced directly myself that you don't have to worry so much about how you're going to get there. You have to have a lot of trust, and you have to have a lot of knowing that if you jump into something and you follow the divine guidance that comes to you, that you'll be supported, because we've been designed to be supported. So that's what I'd share about that.
I love that. That's so awesome. And I like what you said about that word, designed to be supported, because I think sometimes along the way people stop feeling that if they've had some sort of disappointment or they've been hurt by someone or had a situation beyond their control, or so I think that that's important to remember, that what's happening is always for our higher spiritual enlightenment. And I'm glad you shared what you did about being supported financially or on any level. One of the things that comes to mind is something Tony Robbins talks about is, isn't it interesting how we have all these excuses or reasons around money? And he said, and then one example he gives is, he said, say one of your relatives is getting married, and that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, where maybe you're saying, oh, I don't have money to go on vacation or whatever, and yet because this is such a significant event, somehow family members manage to find the money to go and attend this wedding. And so he was saying it's something to keep in mind, to be honest, like you were saying about being honest with ourselves. And I liked what you said a lot, Courtney, about really looking at the fact that of being open to being supported, and about you didn't say this directly, but like the attachment that we have or the meaning that we give to money, that in some regards that it can almost be a veil, that whatever we're attaching to that, or it's something that we're using to not fully step into our purpose or our calling. So I appreciate your sharing your insight around that, because I think a lot of people, maybe not even consciously, you're right, like they use that as a way of not stepping into their greatness to which they're called.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit it. You got it.
Courtney, we have just a few minutes left, and I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit more about your website and just upcoming things. My understanding is right now a lot of your focus is promoting this gorgeous book that you've written, and just being a guide and being a light for people. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah. My biggest inspiration is seeing people light up when they realize that they've always had the power within themselves. And I had that same experience when I lit up. It was like, wow, okay, I can do this myself. And all those teachers that have inspired me, all those people that continue to inspire me, I realized that, that guidance is within myself. And so as I'm sharing my book with you, and as you read my book, I just want you to keep in mind that you have the same wisdom, and don't ever let yourself talk yourself down, and don't ever let yourself feel small, because we have this wisdom, and that's my biggest thing that I have to share about the work itself. But you can always learn more about it on my website, and that is teachingsfromgod.com. And I'm also going to be starting up a online book club in February. A couple months long. I might extend it, but basically I will be holding an online book club. I believe it's going to be on a YouTube live event, but it is going to be designed for us to all connect in one place where we can enjoy the book together and we can talk about it and we can have discussions about it, and any questions that you might be having during the process of reading it and of the journey it really is, we can support each other in that. So the details are going to be to come on that, but I also, in the meantime, I have a weekly meditation series where I share a meditation or some type of guidance in a video or other form. So, again, if you go to my website, teachingsfromgod.com, you can get the information on that and subscribe. But it's a really great community, and I am also active on all social media sites, pretty much all of them. So it's fun to share there too. So anybody who is wishing to connect with me there, I respond to everyone. So
fantastic, fantastic. Courtney, we have about 30 seconds, and I was wondering if you could share with the mentors and spiritual teachers you've had and the like, if there's, and through the process of writing the book, if there's any one particular mantra or piece of wisdom that you would share with us that for you has been particularly transformative.
Yes. I have one that comes to mind. It's one that I learned when I was 9 years old from Master Courtney Lin from Spring Forest Qigong, and he taught me to basically, as I would go into my meditation, I would say this. I would say, I'm in the universe is in my body, the universe and I combine together. And to this day, I'd say that every time I sit down to have a conscious moment and to connect. I will say that, and I'm directly linked, and it's something that has empowered me to remind me of who I really am and where I came from, and that I'm always in this place of power to remind myself of who I am. So that's been a huge, huge thing for me.
Awesome. Well, Courtney, you are glorious, and thank you, and I encourage all of our listeners, please go to Courtney's website, www.teachingsfromgod.com. She writes these beautiful, inspiring weekly meditations, and definitely get the book. It's when people say they're looking for an instruction manual on life, I feel like that this is definitely a library must-have. So definitely treat yourself to having this book in your library. And Courtney, thank you so much. You're just absolutely glorious, and thank you for sharing your radiance and your wisdom with us. We're so grateful.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to everyone who is listening. I've had a great conversation and beautiful connections and energies, so I loved it.
And we did as well. Thank you so much, Courtney. And thank you, listeners, for joining us here on YOUnique, Life Starring You.